You make a bunch of noise out here, so they have peace and quiet in here. Because there's no better sound than the squeak-free guarantee from Advantech Subflooring and Advantech Subfloor Adhesive.
I'm Jake Bruton, and welcome to the UnBuild It podcast. Today, I'm joined by my regular cohort of co-hosts, Steve Basic, and Peter Yost.
Glad to be here.
And today, we're not going to talk about construction. I mean, we are, but we're not. We're going to talk about what happens before construction.
Ooh, you had me worried a little bit. I thought we were going to talk about knitting.
Beanie Babies podcast. It's been a long time coming. Let's talk about Pete's financial future and the choices he made in the late 90s. And why he's still working and not retired.
I mean, choices in the 90s?
We don't need to talk about his retirement age.
It's why he's not retired yet. Poor financial decisions. The Beanie Baby market burst a little quicker than he thought it was going to.
Oh, boy.
So I think a lot of folks, especially in my side of the industry, the building side of the industry, believe the process kind of starts when they get a set of plans. Like, hey, we have plans. Now we can price this and get started. And I think that that's incredibly short-sighted. And it's not just builders. Sometimes it's also clients. Like, well, we found plans online, and now we're ready to build. So
short-sighted is in, like, there's an opportunity for me to become more involved, or from a business side, like there's more opportunity for to gouge the clients.
No, there's more opportunity for you to have a better understanding of the building rather than just, here's a set of plans.
I got you.
Let's call the guy with the high lift to come scrape the property. So
what's a high lift? I did
the cat, big bulldozer. In my market, our guys call it a high lift.
I never heard that.
Yeah, I never high lift.
Tracked with a bucket on the front.
Okay,
so,
a high lift.
A bulldozer? Can we call it a bulldozer?
How about a tracked front end loader?
Okay.
I don't know.
My skid loader is a tracked front end loader.
There you go. Just a different version.
D60.
I'm having trouble with the connection between pre-construction and high lifts.
Actual construction? Yeah. So I thought it would be. I'll take credit. This was my idea. So if it's horrible, you should blame
authorship.
me. I'm going straight to the you can blame me if it sucks.
Or you can credit me if it's a winner. But
Fair.
we're going to credit you if it's a winner. But chances are Pete and I are making it the winner. So
fair. We're in this together. It's a group effort here.
Well, that's how you see it.
I see it as this was the group project, and I was the only one that's done work so far. Mommy and Daddy are fighting.
We're not going to talk about how much work you've done so far for this.
So I think maybe the place to start is to say, like, okay, from your perspective, and I'll pose it to both of you. Number one, what should the pre-construction side look like for your part of the business, be it a consultant or an architect? And number two, what should the pre-construction side, from your opinion, look like for a builder? So that I can get your opinion on how I'm doing it wrong right now. So which one of you wants to go first with what should it look like on your side?
I'm trying to think if I should.
At once?
Well, like I want to talk about it, but I'm trying to find a political way of saying what I want to say. So it's having a pretty long career working with a lot of people from all over the country. What's interesting is how varied some take the approach, and how And when I say varied, it's like we talk about pre-construction, and you talked about, okay, we want to be involved. And some builders will be involved, some will not be involved, even though they say they want to be there. And I'm trying to understand, like, to be involved, you have to have a certain level of understanding. And let me say, rephrase that. You have to have a certain level of relinquished understanding. Like some builders might have an understanding, but they're not willing to let the information out. Some builders will let the information out. I'll just give you an example. There's a remodeling contractor in the Boston area that I've done a bunch of work with. From the very first meeting, and I'm talking like I could sit there and sketch a floor plan on how we're going to remodel this house, and then just on the side, throw down some notes. And I think I've shared a bunch of information with you. I think I've sent you one of their estimates. But like from that, they'll generate like 6 or 8 page estimate. Now, and they'll be the first ones to say some of these things in there are assumptions, right? And we have no idea what kind of cabinet hardware you're going to pick out, but there's a number there of $1,150 for cabinet hardware, because a kitchen that size, that's kind of our experience. That it's I don't know, $100 a linear foot or whatever it is, or $50 a linear foot for hardware. But they put that number in there, and then they say, when we meet with the client on meeting 2, that, hey, your number, this isn't exact, but it's going to give you a ballpark.
They
Right.
they have the ability to apply historical data in an instantaneous or nearly instantaneous format.
Yeah. And
And they're comfortable doing that.
they're comfortable doing it, and they don't even just give you one number. They take the number they calculated, they subtract a certain percentage, and they add a certain percentage. And they say to the client that in all of these categories, you're somewhere between this number and that number. And I think it's highly helpful to the clients, because one, they can sit there and go through the 6 pages and understand, where am I spending the most money here?
Yeah, like
And is there something that's controlling that, right? Like if you're doing this sunroom and we have glass wrapped around it, then there's a big glass number there. So the question is do I really want to have that room, or do I just think it'd be pretty cool to have that room? And so it helps the homeowners look at it and say, where do I want to spend my money, and what is of value to me? As opposed to, I've had a couple situations where I've had the builder sit in on, let's just say 8 or 10 design meetings. And then I give them the drawings, and they aggregate a number, and they come back and they have the number. And I was like, wow. I'm like, the budget for this is $800K, and we're at, $985. How did we get there? Well, you get this, and that. Remember in meeting 2, you did this. And it's like,
if you knew that,
like, why weren't you saying that? And this is where I'm saying the relinquishing of the information. Like, he knew it, but why in meeting 2 didn't he say that fireplace is adding X amount of dollars, or adding that sunroom adds X amount of dollars? Because now we're here where your silence is been taken by the client as some level of acceptance. Like, hey, the builder's been here for all 10 meetings, and he's never thrown up a red flag, so I guess we're within budget. But now we're not within budget. We have to go and explain why there's an added 20 or 25% to that number, where they just didn't have didn't want to.
I'm not
relinquish that
understanding,
number.
like, why would they do that? Is it because you said, hey, we want to get you involved in design, but he didn't think you were serious, or?
I think it's really interesting, and I don't know if I will ever figure it out, honestly, but I know some really intelligent builders where if I sat down and I gave them hypothetical situations, they could talk for hours. But the minute I put a client at the table and a real drawing, they are far more reserved to tout. And I think some of them are just sitting there saying, well, I don't want to give them a number that fireplace is 30 grand, because what if it comes in at 40? Okay, that's fine. I get that. But maybe you should tell them that fireplace that we added there, it's probably not less than 25, and it could go as high as 60. It's somewhere in there. And at least then the homeowner realizes that it's not $100K for that fireplace, but it's not 10K either.
Right. It's a magnitude. You're looking for magnitudes.
Right. And it's like
They're afraid they're going to be held to a number when you want them to say, just help me out with.
So the flip side is exactly what Pete said. I have a deep-seated fear that the first time I say a number is the only number they're going to freaking hear. And if it comes in more than that, I'm gouging them or I've changed. And because it does happen.
It does happen.
And it's a very challenging thing. You have to say this could be as much as 60. It could be as little as 30, knowing that it could be as little as 20.
Right.
Like, depending on the client, I've had some of the best clients we've ever worked with be a royal pain in the rear when it comes to, yeah, but you told me that tile shower was only going to be 15 or 20K.
Right.
Yeah, and then you picked $70 a square foot tile. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
So there is,
but that's where
it's very challenging.
That's where that one builder that writes up the 6 or 7 page estimate based on that first sketch.
Yeah.
And that. Because then at the second meeting or the 6th meeting where they're talking about the fireplace, they can sit there and say, look, we don't even have a fireplace on here. We've just added that.
Yeah.
So that number, whatever it is, for one, is going to be added to this situation. And I would guess it's somewhere between this number and that number. Now, like I said, I worked with a lot of builders. I always find it extremely interesting when we would be at like the 3rd or 4th meeting. We have some general plans and we have an elevation. And candidly, I talk to the contractor and say, what's a ballpark on this? And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying give it to me to the nearest dollar. Give it to me to the nearest 100K. Well, I really want to send this out. And it's like, so in my mind, as the architect, I'm sitting there saying, do you not know your business? Right? Because there's other builders, one that I do some work with that I absolutely love working with. I'd love working with you too. No. But these guys, like, I remember we were sitting there. The wife asked, she said, this is a crazy conversation, but she's like, do I have the ability to jump rope in my fitness room? Like, is it tall enough? Because I think that's going to be one of my requirements. And I said, probably not. We would need to lower the fitness room. We'd push it 2 feet deeper into the ground. It's possible. And she's like, well, does that cost a lot? And I looked at the builder, and he literally, like, without skipping a beat, he goes, yeah, it's probably not less than about 20 grand, but I don't think it's more than 30. It's probably somewhere in there. And she said, okay, go for it. And she made that decision. But when I look at the builder, like, I felt like this is why I like those guys, because they're willing to put, and they're not, I wouldn't even say willing, because there's willing to do it and not have the knowledge, right? And paint yourself into the corner, which some builders do. But they have the knowledge to throw out a number. Like, the whole time I'm doing it, I know he was sitting there because he knew the question was coming. And for the younger builders, I would say, don't even answer it at the table. Just say, yeah, I mean, I could give you a number, but it'd be better if I just went back to the office, worked up that number, and I'll email it to you later this afternoon. And that way there, on the drive home, you can think about all of the things that you didn't calculate when you did that. But you need to give them a number. Like, if you're a professional and you understand this, and it's what's interesting is, and I am going to put builders on the spot, when we're interviewing builders, every one of them is the best one in the country. I know my job. I can figure this out. I'm totally transparent. And then we'll be in the 3rd meeting and I say, how much does that cost? And it's like a blank face. I don't know. And it's
Why
like,
did you ask me that?
Well, yeah, but like when we were interviewing you, you were the pro. So I'm asking you to give me the professional number. And it becomes a challenge. And it's then when someone doesn't speak, then I question, do they not know? And where does this go? Like, are they just getting a number from their foundation guy to get that? And then they add their percentage and that's the number? Like, how do they know that the number they're getting from their foundation guy is the right number?
Do you remember the original question I asked him?
So,
what is your involvement on the pre-con side?
Yeah. But what's fascinating to me is I am so freaking glad you went first, because what I was going to say, has nothing to do with what you've been talking about, which is cost. Because and I thank my lucky stars every day that I'm not a builder like Jake or an architect like Steve, because I never worry about cost. Right? That's I don't cost things because nobody
live in
gives
a
me
right or wrong.
I live in I can tell you what the
very
impact of this
expensive.
is.
This is the best solution. This is what you should do. Job.
But the connection to cost of pulling me in early is that, there's that curve, like here's the opportunity to make change really high and the cost of it is really low. And the further we go along into the design process, the opportunities to change the design drop and the cost goes up. It's like the McCready curve or something. I just don't remember the exact name of it, and I will make a reference to that in the resources. But so you involve me early, not because I can give you costs, but because considering my input is a lot less expensive early in the design process than pulling me in later, and I can give you some examples of that.
Which is the same reason to have your builder be involved from the beginning.
Exactly.
Too. Even if it's just as simple as, my concrete guy he won't do
Right.
that.
My contention is when you say builder be involved, I want the builder to be involved.
And
I
it
got
involves,
that impression from what you were saying.
Yeah.
and
at
for the builder, it
beginning.
involves numbers.
Well, it involves numbers, but I have another builder. We'll drop the numbers, right? He has no problem making architectural suggestions about aesthetics. He has
This might be me.
No, you don't have a problem doing that either. I exclude you from the communication, just like I don't talk about my family, right? So it's
Okay.
because you're at the table. I'm talking about everything that's out in front of us. But this builder that I'm talking about, and actually it's Shoreline Builders, right? Jim, I've been working with for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I can say it because Jim, I love working with him because there's 30 years. We've never even raised our voice at each other, right? And the reason for that is we both respect each other and we speak our mind,
Yeah.
right? If Jim wants to switch something and I don't want to lose the value in that detail, then I'm going to push for it. And he's going to say, okay, I guess, if that's what you really want, we'll just figure out how to do it. But I also respect him when he sits at across the table and he's not afraid to throw out a number at a client and say, yeah, we can go from 1-inch insulating sheathing to R9 from R6. We're probably talking on this house, it's probably somewhere in like a $5,500 range or something, plus or minus.
Yeah.
But again, the homeowner's not going to hold it to him, but it's good that the homeowner doesn't realize that's not a $20,000 jump. And it's not a $1,000 jump.
Yeah.
Right? But he's doing that. He'll talk about things like, and he's really good about it. Like if he knows it's worthy of the conversation, he'll bring it up at the table. But we've also had times where we leave the meeting, we get in the truck, and he's like, hey, you were talking about that. What if we switched to this and I framed that detail like this? It would be faster for us. It'd be a little easier, maybe to air seal that, but our framers would probably prefer to do it this way. Yeah, that's fine, Jim. I don't have a problem with that.
In my work, I think most people think I do building investigations on existing buildings.
Yeah,
but
I don't know what you do.
I do get asked by architects and builders to do design spec reviews. And in large part because they call Steve first and he says, I'm busy. I don't want to do that.
I'm busy. I do the same thing.
In my mind, I'm talking to a person and they're just going on, I want to do this and that. And I mean, will you help us with the details? And I'm thinking, boy, this is perfect. Oh, yeah, I don't really have the time. But my friend Peter Yost, this is a perfect job for him.
So at Building Science Symposium in Kansas City, maybe last year or the year before, I don't remember, Pete was introducing me to one of his clients who's in the northwest Kansas or northeast Kansas area. And about halfway through, I was like, I wonder if Pete remembers that I sent this guy to him. Like he called me first, and I was like, you're outside my market. You should call Pete.
Yeah, give Pete a call.
I think I remember that.
Okay.
But
It's a good default. But when we talk about involvement, that's what I consider involvement. If you're going to take the time to sit at the table with us, then be involved.
Yeah.
And he's a smart guy.
what makes it interesting to hear your perspective on this, Steve, is that I'm working on a project where I got called in during the design process, and I knew the builder. I think a huge part of this is if you're just meeting the other professional who's going to be involved in this design discussion and, detailed discussion of how are we going to do that? Are we going to do that with a double stud wall, or are we going to do exterior insulation? That would be a very tough way to work if I didn't know the builder or the architect or both. And in this instance, I was pulled in with a new client, but who had already picked the builder. And so he and I both knew that at some point we were going to sit down and do the design spec review, which, by the way, will be a resource. I have a template that I use for doing design spec reviews, and it's all about basically continuity of the 4 control layers, because that's the lens at which I'm looking at it. He trusted me that I knew how well he knew to build, and I trusted him that if I pull out this particular question, he's gonna not like, yeah, I know what you're talking about, how difficult it is to do an attached deck. He's not going to bullshit me. He's going to say, okay, you and I need to go over this because I know that I need to learn how to do this detail. And we actually on this project spent 4 hours doing a design spec review, and it went exactly how we both expected it. I knew I could trust him to show me the stuff he wanted to do, or to show me the stuff he had questions on, and he trusted me as a consultant to work on the project. So it can be incredibly efficient. But I think a key component of the Jim, Steve, is that with Jim, that's 30 years of professional development so that you have a seamless
Yeah, but I mean,
relationship.
even in our year 5 or 6, he would still we're certainly both better at our jobs now.
But I think you trusted each other essentially, right?
Yes. Well, and I wouldn't say trusted, but we also relied on each other.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I have a meeting with Jake, and I pull you in now, and we talk about it. There's potentially we don't have a meeting necessarily with the client, but I've called Jake and said, how are we going to do the foundation detail here? You said you wanted to switch the window detail. Let's talk about that. What works for you? And we've developed a number of details that work really good for him. I drew them up and we have them and they work really good for our projects, but we can't get there without that conversation. And the client doesn't need to know. The client's just saying, I'm relying on you guys to give me the best house. You guys are the professionals. Figure it out and get back to me.
Well, and I can tell you, I got pulled into a project where they were really deep into the design, and then I got called in to do a design spec review, and I was nervous about it because I thought I've never worked with this architect before. Or if I did, it was not at this stage of the project. They've got the builder in the room, they've got the client in the room, and I send them the design review, and about halfway through it was like, whoa, this is very clearly that we should have done this together way earlier in the design process.
Now we're working backwards.
Well, and it's a lot of eating crow, I can imagine afterwards the client said, why is this guy involved now? Very clearly, he should have been involved a lot earlier in the process.
Yeah.
Because of that curve between.
Well, and they're sitting there saying, I've wrote a number of checks. How is this information not incorporated?
Yeah.
I hired you because you're supposed to be the professional, and it appears that your professional capacity is in certain arenas, not all of them.
Yeah, if you're going to pull somebody in whose expertise you need, better pull them in earlier rather than later.
Yeah. No, definitely. But it is definitely a challenge where, the amount of experience and it's a real challenge when the budget is relatively tight, because now the builders of choice, they might not be the builder you want to work with in that area. They're
not the builder you can afford potentially.
Yeah, it's this tier of builders or whatever, and it's...
Well, and not uncommon is, the flip side of this is the builder and or the architect tries to pull me in early in the process, and the client says, this seems like a pretty expensive meeting. We got 5 or 6 different people here that we're paying
on the clock,
and we haven't even done anything yet. So, that's the flip side, is that you do have to spend money up front to make sure these things get integrated rather than stuck on afterwards. And so you should prepare your client for, we're spending some significant dollars on experts up front, but it is going to save us money in the long run.
Yeah.
And I would make the argument that list of experts includes the builder. There are plenty of times
absolutely.
that we are given a set of plans, and I'm like, okay, has anybody talked budget with these people? And they're like, yeah, their budget's about $1 million. They might be able to go to 1.1. Great. So why are we looking at plans for a $3 million house? Well, no, I'm pretty sure that I talked to another builder, and he said he was $140 a square foot. Yeah, I'm sure he did say that, and he can't do it for that, know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, there's that level of, this guy said he could do it for this, and I tell the homeowner, I said, go sign the contract this afternoon. Just never complain about what you're getting.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and pull the builder in for way more reasons than just budget. You pull them early in the design process because, even before you start talking dollars, you're going to be saving it by having that relationship with the builder room. It's hard because sometimes the architect's working with a client and there's absolutely no effort to pull in somebody early. Like, why do we need that person here now? We're in the design phase. We're not building anything.
In hindsight, can be very painful. We have a project that we finished a while back, but we had a builder that I said, hey, why don't we let them take a look at it? They took a look at it, gave a number. The homeowners had another builder, probably, I would say 25% less. It was significant enough to say, hey.
That's less than his markup, potentially.
Yeah, and they said, and in all honesty, like, that builder sold it. He did a good job. And I was like, no red flags. He said all the right things and all of this. We built the house. It was a nightmare for the homeowner from pretty much from day one. And all through the project, it was, you could just see, I was getting frustrating calls from the homeowner and saying this and that, and we'd have to sort it out. And the builder did, but it was consistently costing money. The reality is that at the end of the project, their cost to build that house was more than the builder that I wanted to work with, right? Instead of that 25%, they probably paid about 35% more. And it's like with
and
the other builder,
pain.
Yeah, and it's all of that. It's 16 months of total aggravation where, and I know there was nights where the husband and wife weren't talking to each other and challenges and arguments and it's not about what they did. It's just about how do we resolve this with the builder, because that's not what I want. But I don't want to pay another $3,500 change order for something they should have known.
Yeah. How do you ruin something that's supposed to be like one of the happiest things that you get to do? You get to create your own home to fit your needs.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always tell the story. An architect that we used to work with quite often brought me in on a pre-con. We sold pre-con to the clients. We worked all the way through the plans. We gave them a price. It was like a $1.1 or $1.2 million house. We got done with giving them a price and getting to construction documents, and they basically said, well, how do we know we can trust this number? And it's like, well, first of all, how can you not trust me after working together for 6 months and me giving you no reason to not trust me?
Yeah.
And the builder says, well, we can ask 2 other builders for numbers, and he goes and gets comparable builders to give him numbers, and there's $30,000 between the 3 of us. Like, to high to low, there's $30,000. I'm in the middle. They go, okay, we're going to move forward with you. And I'm like, okay, fine, I can accept that. Like, I hate the fact that the architect didn't just go to bat and go, this person's the right person to build the house. He's giving you a fair number. But
because it could have been a lot different than 30K spread.
It could have had. And so then they go to the bank, and the bank says, you got to cut $250K out of the budget. We were not giving you that much. It needs to be at $1 million or 900 or whatever it was. And we spend another 6 weeks going through the plans and changing specifications and reducing some of the size and changing landscaping and killing a pool. And we get to a point where it is within the budget that the bank wants them to be in. And they go, well, how do we know that we can trust Jake's numbers? And I'm like, we just went through this. Like, I really thought that we had a good relationship here. And the builder says, well, I can ask somebody else to give us numbers. And I'm like, man, he needs,
Hung you out
this
to dry
architect needs to
twice.
go to bat for us. He didn't. And he went to a guy who is cut rate, and the guy was $300,000 less than me on a $900,000 project. And they said, well, what are we supposed to do? And I said, exactly what you said. If he can actually do it for that, you should let him do it. I don't believe that he can, but
Not
if
the way we're gonna
if
do
he's
it.
giving you guarantees that he's going to follow our scope of work and the plans that the architect has created, then so be it. The house was $1 million over budget when they got done.
Yeah.
Like
There's-
there are, I have plenty of those stories. That's probably the most extreme, but it's like you as the client should be able to judge someone's character. And if you think that you can't judge their character as to whether or not they're being honest, then that's either a you problem or that's that's telling you not to judge the person's character in a positive light. And the idea that we should be getting 3 numbers is the opposite way that we should think about it. We should be asking someone that we trust to do things the right way.
Jake, what if you had said to that client, look, I'm going to give you the names of 3 of my past clients, and you talk to them about trust? Would that have helped? Because they're missing the boat here.
So we
they have
wrestled.
no idea that it would cost them so much to question
there's
you.
this other thing. I call it willful happiness. Every client has it. Like they will willfully make themselves believe that while Jake has to do the project for 1.2, that this guy that can do it for 850 can do it for 850.
Yeah.
Right? They have
Yeah,
that, and they're going to
somehow I
say
had
it with a
250
smile.
grand in profit.
They won't sit there and say, because I had a similar one with a builder, and it wasn't that large. I mean, it was probably like a 500 or 600K remodel, whole house remodel, and we worked with the builder the whole time, and then the husband, like, he sprung it on me, like, we're getting ready to, we got that builder's number, and he's like, hey, I sent the drawings out to this other builder too, and I got a number back, and it's significantly less. And when I approached the builder that I have done tons of projects with him, and I approached him, he goes, I can't buy the materials. Like, there's nothing in there for me.
I lose money
can't
at
do
that
that.
rate.
Yeah, I lose money at that price. And so I had a conversation with the homeowner about, I'm not saying he's cheap. I'm not saying that he's right, but you have to just question. Mm-hmm. If this guy's at 600 and this guy's saying he can do it for 475, you have to question, he's not getting his 2x4s for 50% of the cost.
Yeah.
Right?
He's buying stuff at the same yard. He's
buying
hiring
at
the same subs.
The concrete's coming from the same batch plant. There's a lot of things that are extra. The cost of the permit is in this town. It doesn't change. All of that boilerplate stuff, it's all there. You have to question, how is this guy over 200K lower?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not only did they take the project and take it with that builder, she was so happy with the number, she recommended it to a woman down the street that I was doing another project with.
Oh.
All right, fast forward.
So she ruined 2 projects.
Project A, they had a steam shower. He did put it up. He'd never prepared for a steam shower. They went in, and he had no clue on how to do it. They went in tile falling off the wall, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just absolutely horrible experience. Client number 2, I get a call towards the end of the project. Steve, I need you to come. We have our lawyer involved. This is, they're still wanting, the builder's still wanting money, and we just don't have, it's not, we're not willing to pay any more on this. And I went there, and it's the paint job was horrific. There were just holidays and globs of paint all around and this and that. So the homeowner started crying, the wife. And sensitive old me said,
I get the sense that that's not. He's
yeah, no, I wasn't, because the other guy was my friend, and he's not a liar or cheater or anything. He's an extremely fair, and is, in fact, I tell him he should raise his prices, because for the quality you get from him, he's actually pretty darn cheap. And I said, why are you crying? I said maybe a little nicer, but I'm like, you got what you asked for, just so you understand that. Mm-hmm. Well, I thought what? And it's like, no. When a builder on their project, it was probably, my suggested builder was probably at like 350. This guy was like 225 or something. I said, you saved well over $100,000. Like it was over a 30% reduction.
Right, and that's just not possible.
How do you think that happens? I'll tell you how it happens. My builder has a real painter. This guy had a couple high schoolers come over after school every day and paint out your addition and your kitchen. And that's how. That guy pays the real rate. This guy's paying $10 an hour to 2 kids to paint your house. And that's why it looks that way. Mm-hmm. You got exactly what you asked for.
Yeah, you got the discount.
Yeah, you got the discount. Exactly.
So, Pete, your question about why not just give them a handful of references. I've been wrestling with this for years now. I don't like giving people's phone numbers out or emails out and saying this is the reference, even if they've said it's okay to do so, because it feels like I'm pestering them to be the advertising for my business.
Yeah, it's an imposition.
I have some clients that are like willing to. They would talk once a week to a future client because our relationship.
Yeah, and we do too.
And we do too. The problem I have with references is if I'm doing a project for you and you say, "Can you give me 3 references?" Well, of course I'm going to give you the 3 glowing people, right? I'm not going to give you the guy that we were at odds with that we walk with. Yeah.
It's
like
cherry picked and not real to begin with.
It's a dumb reference.
I offered it, but I'm just trying to think how can you, if it's about trust, how do you go about earning that other than that process? And so
it's very tough.
It's a very tough one.
Most of the time, the pre-con process is enough to instill trust. Mm-hmm. Like they understand that we showed up to every meeting, we did exactly what we said we were going to do. It cost what we said it was going to cost, and we've provided value. What else can you do at that point? So,
and on that happy note,
good luck.
Well, there's a lot of projects that go extremely well, and it's also part of the client's responsibility to understand. I mean, people have heard me say it a million times. Good things cost money.
Yeah.
Like I can't walk in and say, can we add a 3rd bay to the garage, expecting that the budget number isn't going to change significantly, because it is. You're asking for another 3rd bay, right? I mean, we have clients that say, "Oh, let's put stone all around the foundation and all this." Well, we're not adding $2,000 to the budget. When we do that, you need to understand that. It's like we can do everything. And my favorite line to every client is, the hardest part is paying for it. We can do whatever you want, because they always say, "Well, can we do this? Can we put stone here? Can we make it a 5-car garage? Can I put an in-law suite?" Yeah, I'll try and hang it from the sky. I'm sure we probably have some kind of engineering solution to that. The question is, do you want to pay for that?
Yeah.
Right? That is always the hardest part.
That's a good way to look at it.
Paying is the hardest part.
And I don't, on the flip side, for all those builders that are the cheapest one in the market, what I don't understand is, how do you think that's a viable business decision? Right? Like it's like I know of a builder that's in a market that these guys give a crazy price, and then they work their butts off, 60 plus hours a week, no kind of outside life, and they're doing this stuff. And then you sit there and go, is that really the business model you want?
Yeah. Your 4% take home is what was worth it?
Yeah, you busted your ass. You put up with clients. And what I've learned is, unfortunately, it's like clients are very good at, if you give them an inch, they turn it into a foot. And if you give them a foot, they turn it into a yard. Right? So you have to kind of have that conversation where, no, you can't, you got to do this.
At first, when you started that, I thought it was going to lead into your closing joke.
Well, and it's, no. Well, I'm going to have, before we get to that, I have one other story, because I think this one is extremely relevant, and it's one of my favorites. I'm sitting at the table, homeowner client, and this is, I would say, somewhat typical of clients. We're getting ready to start construction, and the client throws in that, "Hey, I was talking over with my wife, we want to replace the windows here in the dining room. on the side here and in the back. And I could just see it. He said it in such a way like, I'm expecting this not to impact the budget. Like, you're here, I'm spending $900,000 adding
toss
two
it in.
windows. That should just squeak in the bottom, right? And the builder says, well, okay, I could get you a number for that. And he just said, oh. And the builder knew what he was doing. And he's an extremely sharp guy. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. He goes, I'm going to put the numbers together. I mean, we got to take these windows out. I got to get rid of them. We got to prep the opening. We got to install the new window. We got to purchase the window. We got to paint the window. We got to then trim it out, connect it to the weather lapping on the outside, and then, clean up the gypboard, and then we're going to have to paint the whole wall so that it looks right. But I'll go to the lumber yard and see if they'll give us the windows for free. And if they give us them for free, I'll pass that savings directly on to you. And it's like, he just put the homeowner in his place. It's like, if you want to add that, you can, but it costs money.
You pay for it.
It isn't like it just gets swept up in the dust.
Yeah, the connection of the budget to the actual cost, that's real. But the person said, I'm spending $900,000. You should be able to slip these windows in.
Yeah, but you don't have a $900,000 project anymore. Yeah. You have a $910,000 project,
right.
not a $900,000 project.
Yep.
So, all right. So that brings us to the end. In a post-COVID world that we live in, the one of the things that I took away is just how quickly a virus or, disease can invade my body, right? I mean, it was pretty interesting with COVID and sad for a lot of people, but it just makes me sick.
There we go.
And on that unhealthy note.
If you want to reach out to us, questions at unbuilditpodcast.com. You can watch this content on the Build Show Network, on YouTube, you can listen to it on Spotify and Stitcher and Apple Podcasts, basically everywhere you normally get a podcast or consume video content. We're there, except for Netflix, for the time being. Thanks for watching today. Have a good day.
So long.
See you later.